Nose breathing. That's literally it. So I'm gonna structure this in a certain kind of way. So first part, I'm gonna be talking about the story of how my friend and I used nose breathing to like shave an entire minute off our mile times, and then I'll get into like the nitty gritty science at the end for anyone who cares. So if you're over 12 years old, you obviously know, running the mile in PE. In elementary, obviously, you don't really do it at all that much, but at least at my school, we would run the mile twice a week. And now, most of the time, there were just a bunch of fat asses who didn't really care about the mile, didn't really go as hard as they probably could have, and, probably should have because they're fat as fuck. Uh, but I would always go hard in these miles, right? Because why not? It's free exercise. It's just cool. Why not? And, you'd always get a time at the end, and you'd always be trying to get a better time every time. And, sometimes you'd, like, have certain partners, and then you could run with people during the mile. So, there was, my friend Peyton. It kind of all started out, like a year back ago, when I read this book. It was called Breath by James Nestor. It's that yellow book right behind me. So it was like, it was talking about the science of nose breathing and all that, how it can improve your athleticism and all that, whatever. So I tried it, and in like the first couple miles, it's like there's a if you know like any like running terminology, I guess you could call it. It's called the wall, right? Like the part where you just like the part in running where you just want to collapse, right? You just want to die, like you're getting dizzy, everything hurts, right? Well, during the mile, I'd go as hard as I could, and then I'd hit my wall somewhere, right? Because it was like 15 laps around both gyms. I'd hit my wall, I guess, somewhere like in the middle, right? I'd like the 8th lap or so. But I'd nose breathe, I wouldn't hit the wall at all, right? It was like I could just keep on going and going. And then, with an enhanced speed, I would literally shave like a minute off my mile time. So I remember in 7th grade, there was this mile I was going for under 6:30, and at the end, like my final mile, I think was 6:33, but I told my buddy just to write down 6:29. So legally that was under 6:30. But then in 8th grade, I wouldn't go like as hard as I could every time, but I'd still take it seriously. But then there was a time where I thought, hey, you know what? I'm gonna just try and go as hard as I can. And I nose breathed the entire time, and I ended up getting a 5:21. In 7th grade, I didn't do any nose breathing. I got a 6:30. And then in 8th grade, I nose breathed, and I got under a 5:30. Alright? Sure, there were some other factors. It was right after wrestling season and all that, after I was getting into the gym and all that. But that's a shit ton of time shaved off when you really think about it, an entire minute. So then I'll tell you about my friend. His name's Peyton. We would run the mile together because we had similar speeds and all that. But his fastest time he had ever ran was a 7:30. And I like while we were running, that day I went slow, and I was explaining to him like all the science behind nose breathing and all that just to try it. And then next time we ran the mile, he got a 6:30. Which is crazy, because his fastest of all time was a 7:30, and the only thing he changed was nose breathing. And he shaved an entire minute off. And it's a crazy extra bout of endurance that you can get literally just by breathing through a different hole of your face. It's incredible when you, anybody who, cares about athleticism and all that can, just by, something that simple can shave off an entire minute. Okay? If you want to shave minutes off your mile time, if you want to, not even just to go fast or something, just to have endurance, to have more stamina, to be healthier, nose breathe. And now I'll get into the nitty gritty science, right? So, you can breathe through your nose, you can breathe through your mouth. You may think at first it's the exact same because, oxygen's oxygen, carbon dioxide's carbon dioxide. You can inhale O2, exhale CO2, right? It shouldn't really be that complicated. But the respiratory system is a bit more complicated than just some little air pump, right? Oxygen is one of the most important elements in our entire body, and to get it into our body requires actually a bit more of a complicated process than what you might think. So through the mouth, it is basically just an air pump. Diaphragm flattens out, low pressure area in the lungs, air comes in, air gets expelled, all that good stuff, right? But when it comes in through the nose, the nasal pathways through the nose, or the air passageways, whatever the hell you want to call them, airways through the nose and through the mouth, very, very different, right? Mouth, it's just simple, air in, air out. But through the nose, the air gets like many things get filtered out. So if there's dust or dirt or something, it gets filtered out. The air gets moistened, and the air gets clean. It gets moistened, and it gets warmed, and that is a lot more, I suppose, bioavailable to your respiratory systems, to your respiratory system. Your lungs can absorb the moistened, warmed, cleaned air a lot better than it can just air straight through the mouth. And this is why, this is like you may have heard just little snippets about this, but this is why like why you get less sick when you breathe through the nose. And usually when you are congested, it's hard to breathe through the nose, but just from personal experience, it's been like probably like half a year since I've ever been congested through both nostrils at once. And even then when I'm laying down, whatever, like the side I'm on or something, that'll get congested, whatever. I think that just happens to everyone though. But when I'm standing up or when I'm running or when I'm doing anything, since I've been doing all this nose breathing, I have never once in about half a year been congested in both nostrils at once. So, do with that what you will. That alone, I think, should be a perfect reason to start nose breathing. But, yeah, that's why you may have heard, all that. And any kind of, like, bacteria or anything, any, like, kind of airborne pathogen, it gets filtered out when you breathe through the nose. But when you breathe through the mouth, it just comes directly into your lungs, and then you get sick, all that stuff. And then not only is it moistened, warmed, and cleaned, the air that comes in through the nose, but when you breathe through the nose, it releases a bunch of nitric oxide in the blood. And this is where that kind of idea of breathing through the nose gets you more oxygen. That shouldn't make sense because the mouth is a lot bigger than the nostrils, so you think, well, it's more air in, more air out, right? It should be more efficient. Well, no, actually, because the slower the rate of breath intake, the better, actually. Because the longer carbon dioxide is within the bloodstream and within the lungs, the better it is. Because basically, so have you heard of like hemoglobin? It's like the I believe protein within red blood cells that carries oxygen and carbon dioxide. Well, each one of these hemoglobin proteins, I think, they have 4 seats, right, for CO2 or oxygen. But the thing is, the oxygen doesn't always, like, for the oxygen to leave the hemoglobin and go out into the cells of the body, it doesn't just magically go out. It needs to be dislodged by carbon dioxide. But if you have no carbon dioxide to get the oxygen out, then you've got a lot of oxygen in your blood, but then that oxygen just stays in the blood and then doesn't go to the cells. You've got a bunch of stale air in there that's not getting out. But when you slow down your breath and prolong the duration of carbon dioxide that's within your body, then, well, you've got more carbon dioxide to dislodge the oxygen, and it's a lot healthier. But, and that's part of the reason you get more oxygen when you nose breathe, because it's higher pressure air, and it comes in at a slower pace. And back to what I was saying about nitric oxide, this is like one of the bigger reasons that you get more oxygen when you nose breathe, is because nitric oxide, it's like Viagra, like the thing that, people with erectile dysfunction take. What Viagra does is it opens up the capillaries, it opens up like the blood vessels. I don't know if it dilates them, but it expands the amount of space, like the diameter within the blood vessels, so more blood can flow through. So that way, it goes to the penis, you get erect easier. That's how Viagra works. But that's also exactly what nitric oxide does. When nitric oxide gets released in the body naturally via nose breathing, it opens up the capillaries of the body. I actually don't even know what capillaries are, so I'm just gonna say blood vessels. It opens up the blood vessels of the entire body. So there's increased blood flow and there's more oxygen that can go around. And so that's part of the reason it gives you so much more endurance and stamina, is because you get more oxygen. And then when it's coming through the nose, it's also there for a prolonged period of time. It's like when people are panting, like versus when you have like twice the rate, or like half the breaths per minute when you nose breathe or something. It's like, it's a good comparison in the breath, or in the book Breath by James Nestor. It was like when you're rowing a boat, you don't have 100 tiny paddles going like that. You have, or like a kayak or something. You don't have 100 tiny paddles going like that. You have 2 huge paddles going like really long, or like really long bouts. You know what I mean? And these short, controlled bouts are way better at moving this kayak than these like 100 tiny paddles, right? And the same logic applies to breathing. Right? It's like, you can't expect to get anything with, panting like a dog. No, you need to slow it down. You need to have long, controlled bouts of breathing. And nose breathing does just that. And that's basically, that's like the simplest terms I could put it. It's you don't need to understand the nitty-gritty science really to like to shave a minute or two off your mile timer, to be healthier, to have more endurance. You just do it, see how it works. I've been doing it for about a year now, and I would never go back. So, yeah, that's what I got. That's how you shave a minute or 2 minutes or whatever off your damn mile time. You just nose breathe.